Today we have Seth, who goes by the pen name E.B Farmer. He's written books like The Land Flipper, which completely changed my perspective on flipping land. When you hear about his hands on approach and some of the techniques that he uses, I'm sure it'll open your eyes. Seth, welcome to the show. What can people learn from your niche, and what is your niche specifically?
Yeah, I'm what you might call a rural developer. We typically are buying between 20 to 100 acres, long on the road if possible, and breaking it into smaller chunks. And then we're selling those chunks for more per acre than we bought it for. So basically, using the economy of scale and the power of subdivision, particularly a kind of subdivision that is often referred to as a mini partition or a minor subdivision. We tend to do these smaller breakups because they're typically going to be less bureaucratic red tape. So I'm not doing 100 unit subdivisions like a lot of major developers will do. I'm finding 20 acres on the corner at the intersection of two rural highways, paying $5,000 an acre for it, and then I'm selling it for $12,000 an acre after breaking it up into 3 or 4 lots. Typically, those are going to be for residential end users, people who are going to put a mobile home or a small house.
And do you focus on that because there's less red tape or less competition? Why do you go with the 3 to 4 lot subdivisions as opposed to the 100?
It's both. So subdivision rules are typically going to be governed by the county planning council or commission, or they have different names in different places. But they often will have they'll have a hierarchy basically of what you're allowed to do. So if you're a farmer and you've got 100 acres and you want to bust your 100 acres into 250s and sell 50 to your cousin, there's very little red tape involved in that, and it goes up by degrees when you're buying 100 acres and you're breaking it up into 5 or 6. You may have to get someone's signature, like maybe the county president or the head of the planning department's signature, and maybe one or two other things. You'll need a survey, that kind of stuff. Now, once you get up into 10 plus, then they have a whole different set of rules. And a lot of times it'll be things like traffic impact studies, drainage studies, wetlands delineation. You'll need to have a vote at the county council where everyone stands up and gives their opinion on your subdivision, and all the NIMBYs come and get to hurrah about how bad development is and all that kind of stuff. So basically, I'm doing a lot of base hits. Instead of trying to make a $2 million subdivision with a golf course, I'm flying under the radar and I'm doing 6 to 8 deals a year. And when I say base hits, I mean they typically double my investment, but they're anywhere from 50 to $200,000 investments. Now that's what I mean by base hits. And as long as you can stack them up, they equate to a home run by the end of the year. But I'm trying to avoid a lot of the hassle that goes into major development.
And is taking this strategy, is this like you niche into a certain county or a certain state, or is this something someone can do, you think, nationally?
So it's the main thing that differentiates me from a lot of the other land gurus because what I do is very physical and local. So I'm a boots on the ground person. That's what I advocate to my students, and that's my niche. Now, there's certain limitations to that. There's certain advantages to that, but that's just the area that I specialize in and what I teach. So I always tell people there's more opportunity in 3 counties than you could ever do in your lifetime. You should look at it from an abundant point of view. On the other hand, I can't just do like some people can do and send an extra 1,000 letters and double my income. But it's not as instantly and easily scalable. There's not as many systems in place that you can just double up on and hire PAs to do. I'm a boutique developer, and what I do, you might say, someone who really has dug deep into one spot and made the necessary connections with people like the surveyors and the dirt guys and the councilmen and all that kind of stuff that I need to be effective in my area. And that's what I teach.
Yeah, that's actually why I reached out to you. Was I read your book under the pen name E.B Farmer, Land Flipper, Turning Dirt into Dollars, and it was something grabbed me about the idea of going and getting your hands dirty and operating in your local area and knowing the land well and putting a lot of the value add in yourself. That was something that you don't hear a lot in just from all the other people doing land flipping out there.
Well, thank you. I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah.
I do get a lot of emails saying, I'm in central LA and I want to flip some land in Kansas. What's your advice for
Mhm.
me? And my advice is always you may have to talk to Seth Williams or one of the other guys who that's what they specialize in and are very successful at doing it. But that's just not what I teach.
So you mentioned Seth Williams. What if you were sending someone out there to learn from another land flipper? What other influencers or books? Where do you point people who are getting started? What's the
Well,
recommendation?
yeah, I've been on Seth's podcast and always enjoyed listening to what he has to say. Of course, it's almost a completely different business when you really look at it. He's like a commodities trader, basically. And that's what's really popular in the space right now. And whenever someone expresses that's what they want to do, then I always point them to him or some of the people like him. And whenever someone, such as yourself says, maybe says, I live in central Alabama, I've got a tractor, I'm looking to, then I say, okay, maybe you're the right person for this because that's exactly what I teach.
Do you use software and systems, even though this is really hands on within your business? And if so, what's some software you can't live without?
Sure. I've definitely gotten a lot better over the past 5 to 10 years. I've been doing this pretty much my whole life. I'm approaching 40 now. And for the first 10, 15 years, we hardly used anything. I can still remember my dad bringing home boxes of aerial photographs that he had printed out like downtown, and we would lay them out on the floor like a bird's eye view, and we would pick out the properties that were interesting. We don't have to do that anymore, thank God. So a piece of software that has really like for a while there, we were using Google Earth, and Google Earth is obviously amazing, but it's not made for what we're doing. It's just it replaces that need to have printed maps. But nowadays, I can really hype up MapRight. It's actually not called MapRight anymore, but that's what we call it because it was mapped for the first however long. Now it's called Land ID. And it's basically Google Earth for people who are buying and selling rural land or hunting on rural land or just even interested in understanding how the topography works, where the flood zone is, where are the parcel lines, who owns this parcel across the road. Land ID or a MapRight has all of that stuff built into it. A wonderful piece of software. Other things are just things like Excel for tracking notes. I do a lot of buying and selling on Facebook, I'm ashamed to say. It's just it's one of those places where you love it or hate it, it has a lot of eyeballs. People sit there and scroll it all day. So you take some lovely drone shots of your property with a flowing pasture and beautiful oak trees, and you put it right in front of everybody in your local community, and you say, "This is for sale." It's really powerful.
Where do you source a lot of your deals? How do you find these?
I buy a lot from real estate agents who I've developed relationships with over the years. I buy from banks' REO departments, like local mid to mid-sized banks that have repossessed property with an old farmhouse on it or whatever. And I've developed relationships with those banks over the years. Timber companies have huge portfolios of property, and they often don't discriminate between the really valuable corner piece and then the landlocked swamps that's way in the back. So that can be really powerful. I've bought so many great deals just from driving down a road and seeing some dinky Fizbo sign.
Mhm.
So it's not something that I can really teach in a scalable sort of way, but it's more of a matter of once you learn how land works and you learn to recognize value in 100 different ways, it's that thing they say when you're always thinking about blue cars, every car you notice is a blue car, right? I probably butchered that, but it's what if you set your mind on a certain thing, it appears oftentimes.
If you had one message that you could just throw out there to people thinking about doing land development, what would that be? If you could put it on Twitter and everyone on the internet can see it.
Sure. I know Twitter, you have to be really brief, but this is what I always say. And it's like a bit of wisdom that's always stuck with me that I feel like it applies to so much more than land. But it's like whatever you want to do, especially if you're going to be in any kind of flipping or buying and selling, all you really have to do is to become an expert in one thing. It can be whatever you want it to be. It could be watercolor 18th century French paintings if you want. And I guarantee if you go to the garage sale, you'll eventually find a Matisse or whatever that's priced at $20 that you could probably sell to $1 million for the Met in New York or whatever. Just because you recognize value in a way that the people around you cannot because they're not as versed in this world as you are. So whatever it is that you're going to buy and sell, I would say, and this is just my opinion, it's not a knock on anybody, but do not look at the thing that you're buying and selling as a number in a spreadsheet. I think that's the worst thing you can do because numbers in a spreadsheet are interchangeable, right? But if you become an expert in this one thing, then you start to recognize value in places where other people just can't. And that's one of the reasons I don't have to send mail outs offering 20 cents on the dollar for property because I'm not looking for the value already there in the low price. Of course, if I can get it, I'm going to go for it. I'm always looking for it. But really, I'm looking at it from a particular lens of how much, what's the full potential of this property when it is developed for rural lots, for mobile homes, for people who want 5 to 10 acres in the country. So I might see something and, it's Farmer Brown's 40 acres is at the end of a road and it's been in his family for 200 years and he doesn't care. His kids don't care about it and they don't think it's worth anything because it's out in the sticks and they're willing to sell it for $1,000 an acre. Okay. I happen to know that there are city people who are just aching to get out of the suburbs and who want nothing more but to have 10 acres with horses and goats, and they want to build a big house in the back. And as long as the topography is right and they can get access to high speed internet and there's the ability to get a water well drilled and all that kind of stuff, they'll pay me $10,000 an acre. And that's just because it's an inefficiency that exists in the market, but it can only be recognized by someone who's an expert in that thing. And these kind of inefficiencies are in all sorts of different markets. It's not just land or real estate. It could be almost anything. So I would just advise people to I know my tweet has gone on really long here, but just become an expert in whatever it is you want to flip. Becoming an expert is the value. The knowledge is the value.
Lucky for you, tweets no longer have a character length,
Really?
so you can call it a thread if you want now, or you
Oh,
can
cool.
just post yeah, so you're all
Good.
good.
No more brevity.
Uh,
That's
yeah. You mentioned that there's inefficiencies in the land market. Do you see that have you seen that change at all over the last decade?
I suppose if you're in Manhattan and you have busloads of people who are experts. And even so with houses, like, if you're looking at a 3 bedroom, 2 bath house in this neighborhood and it's 2,500 square feet, and there's going to be some efficiency there about, okay, this is what that house is worth. Here's all the comps. But with rural land, it's really extreme just how inefficient the market is. And I can't tell you how many times I'll see a piece of land that's listed on the MLS. I'll call some agent who's in the city who has never been to the land. And first, I have to leave 3 or 4 voicemails before I even, not to disparage all agents, but this happens often. I have to leave 3 or 4 voicemails before I get them to call back. They finally call back. They send me a map pin that's in the totally wrong place. I get there. There's no trails. There's no tracks. The survey's wrong. There's no corner pin put in. The There's a gas line on the back that wasn't disclosed. The corner irons are not set, whatever it is. And because I know about the property, I'm able to know things that the agent doesn't know and to see value that they might not have been counting on. And not only that, but I'll buy land from people all the time. And it's like the old thing. If you've got this old junker boat in your yard, it's almost worth negative money to you, right? You just want it gone. But to someone who's like a boat aficionado who runs a boat store in the city, like they might come out and pay you for it. So different things are worth different amounts to different people. And there's a lot of inefficiency there. Also, the MLSs are broken up into different MLSs. Like in my area, there's 3 different MLSs and it might be in one and not in the other. And a lot of times you can't even get someone to show you a piece of rural property. You'll call them up and ask for a showing and they'll show up in high heels or a business suit. And so yeah, there's all kind of inefficiencies just to answer your question, but it's extreme in land. I think it might be less extreme in houses.
I think that's one of the fun things about land. And not only is there inefficiencies, you're also describing some asymmetry of information. Knowing what you do, you go out there, you have all kinds of extra information that most people aren't privy to
Right.
through the
Right.
realtor or themselves. What's the main reason that you see people selling land? You mentioned it being a burden. So maybe they're paying taxes. They aren't going to use it. They thought they're going to develop it. Maybe, yeah. What's like the top reason that you see someone just take this land for whatever?
It varies so much. A lot of times I'll buy land from kids who got it from their parents. And not to give away my exact geographical place, but I'm from the rural South. We've experienced some brain drain over the years. So people, they inherited some land from granddad and then they went to Atlanta or they went to Dallas to be a dentist or a lawyer or whatever. And they don't even know what the land is a lot of times. They just, oh, that's some item on my sheet. I'll get rid of it. That I would say is probably the main reason, but there's all kinds of different reasons. I'm surprised. What really surprises me is how people will have a long piece of property on a road in which it's relatively simple to break it up into 4 lots and make twice as much money for selling it, and they just won't do it. They'll just sell it to me and I'll do it, and it'll take me 6 weeks. But I guess they just don't it's you don't know what you don't know, and you don't wanna mess with things. It's like doing your taxes. Doing your taxes is
Mhm.
really not that hard, but, just do it for me. Like, I'm that way with my taxes. I do not wanna talk about it or look at it or anything. I don't care how simple it is, just do it. I'm not doing it.
Yeah, agreed. It's like the selling your used car back to the dealership. People
Uh-huh.
know they're not getting full dollar value out of it, but just whatever. I don't want to deal with this at
Right.
all.
If it's not your thing, it's not your thing.
You mentioned purchasing lumber company land. Can you tell me a little bit more about that? Why do they sell their land and what do those deals look like?
Yeah, so a lot of times they'll cut a piece, that they've been growing timber on for 20, 30 years, and timber has a cycle. I don't mess with timber quite as much as my old man does. He actually wrote a book about it because he was really into it back in the day. But there's basically like a cycle to timber, like you plant it and then I think about 15 years in, you thin it, and then another 10 years, you thin it again. I think after like about 30, 35 years, what they'll do is they'll just clear cut it. You don't want the trees to get too big because then a lot of the mills can't handle it. So there gets to a certain point where they're just like, all right, I'll cut them all down. And when that happens, they're like at a crossroads and they say, do we want to divest of this or do we want to spend the money to replant it and spend 30 years manicuring it and releasing it and all the kind of stuff that they have to do? Or do we want to divest it and buy some? So they have all kind of calculations that are way over my head. But a lot of times I'll usually through a contact, and this is something that I can't really teach again, but I'll find out that a company, and it's usually middle sized company, not behemoths like Weyerhaeuser. Although I have bought from Weyerhaeuser and IP and all that. They'll be selling like a portfolio of 500 acres, and it's 50 acres here, 30 acres here, 100 acres here. And if you can get to that contact person, and it's way easier, obviously, with a medium sized concern. But if you can get to that a contact person, and you can be on their radar as someone who buys rural land, you can really clean up because, like I said, they don't. To them, it's just it's a number in a spreadsheet. That's all it is. They're not thinking, oh, there's good road frontage on that piece, or this piece has great topography, or this piece has access to high speed internet. They don't care. It's just an acre is an acre to them. It's all they just say $4,000 an acre for anything you want. And then,
Okay. That's good to know. So yeah, I didn't understand that cycle, but now that's a great piece of information. What's an unusual habit or an absurd thing that you love about land or just in business or in general?
I'll tell you this, if since you asked specifically for absurd, but and this is really mostly my wife, but I've decided that I'm on board with her with this. But a lot of times what I'll end up doing is I'll buy 40 acres and there'll be like a really old house on it. A lot of times somebody's died or moved away or whatever. And a lot of times those houses are just full of junk. And it's like my wife's favorite thing to do is to go out there on a Saturday and pick through all those old, because a lot of it could be considered like antiques, and I doubt much of it is worth anything. But it's just fun to see. Oh, somebody lived here 50 years ago and had this life, and there's posters from the 50s up on the wall with Dean Martin or whatever, old liquor bottles that look really cool, or an ashtray that's shaped like a deer, whatever it is. That's always really fun and interesting. Yeah,
Oh, that is cool. That is cool. That's something that I'm drawn to about land is the just the history that it has.
very
It's neat.
much.
What's a new belief or a habit that you've picked up that's improved your life over the past couple years?
Oh man. So I've got a good answer for this one because for the past like maybe 20 years, I've exclusively been like the selling person for my family and our company. And I've done all the sales. I've been very hands on with all my sales, with all my buyers, walking them through the whole process and negotiating with them and then taking payments from them and stuff like this. I guess around the time the pandemic hit, I was like, you know what? I'm going to use a real estate agent. This is something that I would never recommend unless it's somebody that you really trust. Once you sort through enough and you find one that's really hungry and that's a little bit versed in land, find one that's got a pair of boots, in other words, and basically turned over a lot of the selling stuff to them. And it's just made my life so much better because there's a lot of not emotion, but there is some your listeners who've ever been involved in sales and negotiating and stuff and been doing it like for their primary breadwinning, it gets very tense. And also on the opposite end of the spectrum, the buyers are buying one of the biggest purchases that they're ever going to make from you. And so there's some big expectations there. You don't want to ever let anybody down and you want to help them, but at the same time, like they can be extremely demanding, which is their right. But I've just found that stepping away from that and finding some other people that I can say, all right, you call them and you tell them we'll take this much money and I want you to meet them out there and I want you to show them this and just call me when the closing's ready. And that is an amazing thing. It's taken me 20 years to get there, but it's such an amazing feeling. And yeah, so if you can, I'd say do everything hands on at first until you have more money than you have time and then slowly make the transition. Because at first you're going to have more time than money.
Great advice. I was a real estate agent in the past, so I feel that one. There's so much emotion attached to the
Mhm.
entire process. What's bad advice that you hear often around land?
I'm opinionated and I have my set ways of doing things. Some might even say stubborn. So this is not gospel, but I don't believe in hiring PAs from other countries to do things for you. I think that if you're actively engaged in this, that you should be reachable. Like people should be able to pick up the phone and call you and say, I want to buy your land, or I'm a dirt guy who's looking for work, or whatever. I think that being connected in with people is the way to do it at first. I think that you should know every step of the process from physically going out to the property with a chainsaw and cutting limbs, all the way to closely inspecting the title insurance policy, to all the way to collecting your own notes and being hands on with things until you get to a certain point, of course. Also, I don't necessarily believe in the blind mail out thing. I know that it works. And I know a lot of people who've done it successfully. And I've even teamed up with some people who've done it successfully. And so I'm not saying I don't believe that it works. I'm just saying the way I do things, because I'm like a community based person, right? I'm dealing with people in person in a small area, an area where I live. So the idea of sending out 800 letters to all my neighbors and saying, hey, give me your property for 20 cents on the dollar, please, is just so gross to me. And that's just me because that's the way I do it. If you're in Kansas and you want to do it in Nebraska, maybe that's different. But those are some things.
Yeah, you come from a very connected approach for the whole process. That's really unique about what you do. It's a good perspective. If you were to start over, given how much of this comes from just years and years of experience, if you were to start over now, let's say you had 10 grand to start with and it was just you, how would you, and maybe you weren't tied into a community, but you could be, how would you start over?
There should be no delusions about the way capitalism works. The first 10 grand is the hardest money that you're ever going to make. The second is the first 100 grand and then the first million. And then once you get to that point where you have $1 million, it's, of course, it seems easy to you and you make it sound easy, but really it's making the first amount of money that is everything. So I guess if I had to do it over again, I would probably be, I would probably be a little less risk averse, because when you're starting out, if you are starting out with $10,000, the downside of losing $10,000, especially if you already have, say you have a job and you're a plumber or whatever, and you want to risk $10,000 with this business, the downside is small compared to what it could be, which is the upside, which is to escaping whatever it is that you're trying to escape from, whether it be you don't like your job or you want to move up on the hierarchy or whatever. But a lot of people, they got a good job and they've got like $5,000 they want to invest, and they're so like risk averse. They don't want to do anything. There's a 10% chance of failure. They won't risk that $10,000. And I was like that too in the past. I was very risk averse. And I always tell people like who want to be entrepreneurs, the most important skill for an entrepreneur to have is to control their fear, because fear is the great mind eraser. Is that the right quote from Dune? Fear is the great mind eraser. I forget how the quote goes, but you guys who are sci-fi people will. Yeah, it's true. Like when you start to get afraid, you're not thinking clearly, because think about it. You lose the $10,000. What's going to happen? It's not like your children are going to be taken from you or anything like that. You're just going to go back to work. And the upside is you could propel yourself forward 5, 10 years by risking that. That first $100,000 is the whole thing. If you can do that, you just have to decide when to stop working. Like, how much money do you want? But getting from 0 to where you work at a dry cleaner and you make $2,000 a month to getting to where you're doing these deals and making $100,000 a year or whatever, that's the biggest struggle that you're ever going to have. So I would say buckle down for whatever that takes to get over that hump. Charlie Munger had this quote where he said, "Do whatever you can do to get that $100,000 of stock." It's like sleep on the floor in your friend's house, walk to work, do, whatever it is you have to do to get that $100,000.
What books or things might you recommend as far as learning for entrepreneurs?
Sure. I like Deep Work by Cal Newport. I think he really struck a chord with me with that book. The thesis of that book is just that as our world gets more advanced with AI and all this kind of stuff, and accompanied by all the distractions and stimulation that we have, the people who are going to be successful are the people who can like really pour themselves into something so completely that they are able to shut out everything else. And I think that's so true. And I see it even with myself. We're so very much distracted these days. And everyone I go out to dinner with, and there's 6 people at the table and 5 are on their cell phone. But it's really going to become a high demand skill to be able to have that intense human focus, whether it's creativity or whatever like that. It might be a little cocky to recommend my own book, but you can read The Land Flipper, Turning Dirt into Dollars. If you're interested in this specific niche, it's definitely not the best overall entrepreneur book or anything like that, but it might be the best about this exact particular thing that I'm talking about because I haven't read everything, so I don't know. But and a third book, I don't know. To be honest with you, I read mostly fiction, so I can recommend the hell out of Cormac McCarthy, who just recently passed away, is my favorite author. He's got nothing to do with entrepreneurship, but he'll teach you a lot about life.
And it seems like deep work to some extent is a little bit of your superpower in such a fast moving, everyone's got PAs and they're sending out 10,000 mailers and you're going and meeting your neighbors, digging dirt. It feels like that kind of keeps you focused, which is interesting. Also, I'll give a shout out to your book, The Land Flipper. I've read a ton of books and things like that. There's differences in books. Some books you'll read and all of a sudden you have either new ideas or something actionable. They change your life in some way. When I read The Land Flipper, to be honest, I didn't expect much. I was like, whatever, I'm going to read this book because it's a book about land flipping. And I read it, and then all of a sudden my entire perspective changed. Now I've been contacting some of my construction friends. I've got investor friends, and I'm like, hey, I do this land flipping thing. What if we did it at home? And what if we went out and dug the dirt ourselves? And I really appreciate your book for that. I think that's cool.
They
So
probably thought you were crazy, huh?
actually, my buddy, he works in biotech sales, but he also builds brick walls in his backyard for fun. He just
Oh,
loves me and him both grew up doing construction, so we actually love hard work.
that's
So
awesome.
they yeah, so a couple of them were like, yeah, some of them thought I was crazy, but some of them were like, "Oh my god, I would love that. That's so much
Yeah.
better than
Yeah.
sitting at the computer." So yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. What other businesses surrounding land flipping or things do you offer? I know you've got the Land Flipper book and then possibly other books, courses. What's going on around land flipping for you?
Yeah, so we have a few other books, and we just wrote one. We just published one, which I'm really excited about. It's actually mostly written by my old man who is in his 70s now and has been doing this like pretty much his whole life. And we wanted to write, so we've written several books about entrepreneurship and about the business and stuff like that. But both of us, like I mentioned, we like to read fiction and we enjoy fiction. And so this is a nonfiction book. But what we wanted to do was to set out to write like a business book that was all narrative. We just wanted to tell a story. And we wanted to write a book on business as if it was Great Expectations or something like the story of somebody's life. So basically, we sat down and I knew the stories by heart because he's told them to me 50 times over the years. But we basically just recorded a bunch of his stories from how he went from rags to riches, essentially. And he had times where he lost a lot of money and bounced back and made it all back. I mean, he's made and lost several fortunes in his life, and he had a lot of stories to tell. And he's done it all through land flipping and a little house flipping too. So we recorded a bunch of his stories and we turned it into a narrative. And it's called "1,000 Deals My Life as a Land Flipper," and it's on Amazon now if you're interested. Also, we offer a course at landflippers.com. You can also go to thelandflipper.com. Either one of those will direct you to some of my stuff. But there's a course that's 15 hours of me just going through the whole process. So if you're interested in that, you can use a coupon, I read the land flipper, to save some money. I'm not sure how much it is now. You'd be saving a big chunk anyway.
Killer. And then what's the other best places to find you online? Are you active on any of the social media or things like that?
Yeah, there's a land flippers Facebook group, and then I have just a Gmail account where I just correspond with people. If you ever want to email me at thelandflipper@gmail.com with questions or anything like that, I'm available.
Wonderful. Any final thoughts for the listeners here today, Seth?
Oh, thanks for having me. You're a good interviewer.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. And yeah, I'm just extremely curious since this was a fun interview. So thanks for your
Oh,
time today, Seth. Thanks for coming
yeah,
on the show.
thanks, Brandon.